Welcome to What You Missed When You Didn't Exist. I am Corbett, and I am 52.
And I'm Lucy, and I'm 23 now.
No, it doesn't rhyme anymore.
I don't know what to tell you, dude. It's gonna be like this for a whole nother year.
Hell, another 6 months or so. That's fine. So today we're talking about, we're talking about Elvis, which technically started long before I existed, but specifically the death and probably, I guess, the Aloha, Hawaii Elvis concert. Those happened essentially in my lifetime, very specifically in my lifetime, because I remember the Aloha Hawaii concert happening because it was a special on television when I was a really little child. But it was a big deal. Like, oh my gosh, Elvis is doing a concert and you can see it on TV. On TV. You don't just go
Whoa.
see concerts. That's crazy talk. The Elvis Aloha Hawaii concert was probably the one, probably best known because that's when I think that was probably the first time he really introduced the big white jumpsuit that he's known for.
But
The
seriously, that was
classic.
the only time he introduced that outfit?
Oh no, he wore it several times, but that was really when it was like, wham! That's Elvis right there, full white
Oh.
jumpsuit. I think he wore a black version of it on another television concert, and of course he went on tour with it. So it was kind of a thing. It was the
Hmm.
amazing polyester jumpsuit that it was, and I remember a minor story from Steve Martin where Elvis was on concert. Steve Martin was like one of the other acts, and he stops in to see Elvis, or Elvis stops in to see him. That's what it was. Elvis stops to see him and says, hey, man, you're pretty funny out there. And it's like, oh, thank you. I was doing my best. And it's just Steve Martin, which is kind of funny because he's a legend in his own right. But he had some guy come in and say, oh, King, we got to get going because of this. No, it's okay, man. I'm going to stick with him. So basically, he had a guy who would like prompt him to, we got to go. No need to stand around, which I got to admit, there's a lot of times I wish I had that person. Just to kind of end conversations and move right along. Kind of nice.
Yeah.
But he pulled out, he's like, hey, do you want to see my guns? And he pulls out his guns and shows them off to Steve. And he's sitting there with Elvis's 2 6 shooters. It was a very awkward moment for Steve Martin. It's kind of funny. But the concert, Elvis Aloha in Hawaii, was a big deal because it was really widely televised. You could see it on, I believe, ABC. I think he did the first one in 72 or 73. So I really don't 100% remember that. I can't tell you that for sure. But
Hmm.
they rebroadcast it again almost every year, it felt like. Kind of like, much like a Christmas special. That isn't that special when it happens every year, I guess. Anyway, that was kind of a big deal. And for me as a child, it was kind of hard to comprehend that this guy is really important. He is massively important. My dad really emphasized that, this guy is important. He's a big deal. He died in 1977, and I definitely remember it's probably one of the more emotional moments for my dad. I don't want to say like, oh, he cried, but it was kind of a heartbreak for him a little bit. I think both Elvis and John Wayne died within a year or two of each other, and Elvis was a big deal.
Hmm.
August 16th,
Wow.
1977, he died from an overdose. And this is the part that kills me because I always presumed, like, oh, he was old and he was overweight and all this stuff that everybody says in the postscripts, but I didn't realize he died at the age of 42,
Whoa.
which, I presume he had to be in his 50s. And that was not the case. He died as a pretty young guy.
That's crazy. I kind of thought the same thing too, just like thinking about his death. Like, oh, he's got to be old. Wow,
Well,
that's
I mean, he's
crazy.
42, so he's older than 23.
Yeah, but that was like 10 years ago in your time, so
Yeah, I
that's like,
know.
yeah, long dead.
No, it was a big deal, though. It was a huge impact. And you also think that was toward the end of his career as far as things kind of coming down a lot. You got to realize in the 60s, well, the 50s and 60s, of course, he was a big deal because he made the impact. I should probably emphasize for anybody who doesn't even know who Elvis is, and it's shocking to think that there's a possibility there are people who don't know who Elvis is, but Elvis Aaron Presley, commonly known as Elvis, and also commonly known as the king of rock and roll, kind of, well, actually took a lot of, I guess, African American music at the time and redid it as white folk music. I don't know how else to say it. He basically made rock and roll. He made the elements of what would become rock and roll, or the downfall of society, as other people might look at it.
Mhm.
If you listen to his older stuff, That's All Right was his first one. I think Hound Dog was the big one that got him out there.
For any of you young folk, if you've seen Lilo and Stitch, that's basically all about the King's music and how Lilo and Stitch use it to help get through their emotional trauma together.
There you go. That's a nice tie-in.
hmm It's also in the game plan with The Rock.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
because The Rock is, well, his character is obsessed with the king, and so he becomes the king of football in the game plan, and that's like his whole shtick.
Huh.
Yeah.
I guess I need to watch that. But he does. I will admit, The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Just to clarify who we're talking about, he does do a lot of singing bits, and whenever he does, he usually uses Elvis's music. Elvis is kind of an easier one to imitate, I guess, because he has a good baritone voice when he's singing, and
mm,
it's sort of a calming, lilting kind of sound, and it's almost spoken word in some of his slower pieces.
yeah.
But yeah, he was a good performer. He was big news for anybody out there. And in the '60s, before and after, he went off to serve his time in the army. I believe he got to the rank of sergeant, if I remember right, and was released from the military like in 1960. And he did GI Blues, the movie. He did several movies. GI Blues was the big one, and it was basically lots of Elvis. Every Elvis movie is a musical, and by a musical I mean it's Elvis singing most of the time.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's like in Kanto when he's like going through like his fake dad is that guy that sings in all of those movies and he's just the hero with a singing heart of gold and then
Yeah, yeah. That's
okay.
I'm sure that's what they were trying to emulate or clone to a certain degree.
Well, I'm guessing there's a Latinx person that did that and not just Elvis that did that,
That's
but
very likely. There's a lot of Latin singers out there, and there's a lot of Latin movies, big
yeah.
ones. Kind of surprised they don't get those translated over, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah. It's better to hear them in the native language. It ruins it if you translate it. You lose the flair.
But I will say Elvis had an impact on the culture and probably the entire century, the 1900s for you youngsters. In the olden days,
In ye olden times.
I will say I remember also one of the more notable bits. I think they talk about it in Drunk History when Elvis became a secret agent, or not an agent. He became a DEA agent or something like that. He got a
No way.
he got
What?
he got a special badge.
For
Do you know what?
doing what?
He got a Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs badge, which
Wow, that's ironic.
that has a lot of irony to it because of what happens to him later. But he basically he thought it'd be great if he had a badge and had ability to use it.
hmm
And so he basically contacted Richard Nixon, the president of the United States at the time. Nixon didn't really know much about him or didn't pay much attention. It's like, oh, he'll get the kids involved. So he's like, hey man, give me one of them badges. I need a badge. And I don't know what the deal that was struck or how he really went about it. And they tell a pretty funny story in Drunk History that makes it kind of come out. But more or less, he got a badge. A
hmm
badge from the Federal Bureau. Is it the Federal Bureau?
Yeah, the Federal Bureau of
Federal Bureau.
Investigation.
The FBI is a special Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs badge. And he would whip it out almost all the time. Like, hey, I'm a federal agent.
Oh my
And just do
gosh.
whatever he wanted to do. I mean, that's got to be kind of cool.
Yeah, but that would land you in jail if you did that.
Yeah, but who's going to arrest the king?
People that follow the law. Celebrities get arrested. That's how like all their DUIs happen.
Well, back then it was pretty rare that would happen. Honestly, celebrities could do practically anything they wanted to anyway without a badge.
yeah.
I mean, I hate to say this, President Nixon at the time I know this is hard to believe, might have done a few things less than honorable.
Well, yeah. Isn't that why he got what? Not emancipated. What's the word?
He got emancipated.
What's the word? You know what I'm trying to say. What's he
He
left?
resigned. He
Resigned.
resigned from his office.
Yes. Was almost kicked out.
He did not get impeached, if that's what you're aligning
Impeached.
to.
That's the word.
There was a potential chance. Anyway, we're not talking about Nixon. We're talking about the king, Elvis.
Yes. The king himself.
In 77, he died of an overdose of barbiturates.
Yes, which is like opioids.
Well, at the time, I remember 60 Minutes showed like this is if it equated to the amount of aspirin. They're like, oh, it'd be like if you took this much aspirin. They showed like probably like 3 shovelfuls of aspirin sitting on a table.
What?
And like
That's
it's like you
terrible.
took this much aspirin. And I just
Hmm.
remember that because it was like this big pile of aspirin sitting on the table, and the 60 Minutes person was like, oh yes, this is what it would be. I'm like, wow, that would hurt my tummy.
Yeah, that would hurt a lot.
I really don't know all the details. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's been hidden to a certain degree, but it was a sad day for sure. He really should not have ended his life on purpose or by accident as soon as he did. However, I know on a secondary level, he was having trouble with his marriage. There were complications at home. He was still trying to kind of re kickstart his career because after he came back from the military, he thought his career was over, and then he did his
Mm.
comeback tour, and he was right back in it doing movies and stuff. But the 70s kind of created the Aloha Elvis, which is when he started going to Hawaii and doing
Oh,
the big tours and stuff like that. And I think the pressure was probably just getting to him, which is why he turned to drugs.
yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he's also a performer, and they kind of do that on their own. Not that every performer's doing drugs, but it's like
It
all over the
happens.
place, so it's there.
Yeah. So
But
when did he get famous? Was it the 50s that he got famous? Because that was like the rock and roll. That was him releasing Hound Dog or Jailhouse Rock or whatever it was.
all of those. The first one was That's All Right. I remember that because it was much much lower key. I remember most of the music he's done. If you go back and look for the original blues stylings that he was essentially stealing,
Hmm.
well, I really don't consider it stealing because he redoes it in his own right. If you have an artist who redoes a song and it becomes kind of their song, I don't know how you look at that. I've talked to people and everybody has a different take. Like, that's so and so's song because they wrote it. Like, yeah, but they didn't perform it in a way that makes it really memorable. And Elvis was kind of doing that. He was taking these blues songs that
Hmm.
were sort of sad and low key, and he'd punch them up and make them really well rock and roll.
Yeah. I think personally, I think because he didn't give the credit, because he still could have sang it and said, well, actually, I got this idea from this artist who sang the song, rather than just
Hmm.
saying, I came up with the song. It was all me because I'm a genius, like that kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
that's what people get kind of icked. Yeah, like icked or deterred by. It's just that fact that he didn't give credit when credit was due.
Well, and to give a little credit, the song was from 1946, so it was almost 10 years before. He
Whoa.
recorded it in 1953.
Yeah.
But it was a blues song called That's All Right by Arthur Cudrup.
Oh.
And if you go through and listen to all of the Elvis songs that he did that were essentially redone,
Hmm.
they are very different when he records them. I don't consider him a copycat artist, really.
Yeah.
The bigger thing was he brought that music essentially to, well, white people
Yeah.
because they were not going to listen to that type of music.
I know it was
Or
sinful and
well,
scandalous
let
and
me say it this way, those people's music.
oh my gosh. Yep. You're
I'm
gonna get us
sorry.
canceled, Dad.
It's the way it was looked at the time. I'm not saying it was totally right. It's just that that's the way it was. And it's kind of good because it got the music out there and people started going back and looking for the original songs and seeing, like, is this better? Is this worse? And you can compare and contrast and decide for yourself.
Yeah.
As far as Elvis goes, I always kind of enjoyed his music, so it's fine with me. And I've heard tons of cover songs from other bands that redo it one way or another, no matter the color of the skin of the artist.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you feel like, I mean, other than you mentioned Lilo and Stitch, as far as, living in the future and all that, what do you feel like Elvis had any contribution to impact like your generation at all?
Well, I'm not the biggest person that's in music. Like I don't analyze that in a way to say, oh, like his music could connect to, the punk rock evolution that is going on right now because I don't think many artists sound like Elvis anymore. But it's nice because with TikTok and everything, we're able to discover artists a lot quicker. So it is easier to kind of give credit where credit is due because I don't think as many people are stealing songs. But I know so many people are back on the Elvis train. Like he's kind of come back into being just because there was that new movie with Austin Butler that came out, that Elvis movie, which I haven't seen yet. I've heard it's really good. I just haven't dedicated 3 hours of my time to watching that movie.
It's epic. I have no idea.
it's
I haven't seen it.
it's 3 hours. I just don't have that kind of time laying
I don't know.
around.
I remember the Kurt Russell biopic of Elvis back in the 80s. So
Oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Because
there's
there's that one, and then the new one that just came out or is about to come out, the Priscilla movie
oh,
with Jacob Elordi, and I don't know the actress who's playing Priscilla in that, but there's that just came out, and I think there was another one. I have no idea. We're kind of everyone's back on the Elvis train, I guess, which is so weird because no one's playing his music. They're just excited about his life and all of the drama that was in it, I guess. I
he
have no idea
certainly
what
had that.
happened, but it must have all happened when who was his daughter? Lisa?
Lisa Marie.
Yeah, when she died. I think after that, like everyone started getting back into, oh my gosh, there's more details that we've discovered. So I've
Well, that's
never
true.
heard
Well,
people
Lisa
rave
Marie,
about
his
him.
daughter, was married to Michael Jackson, the king of pop,
Yeah,
which he was dubbed the king of pop long before that. But it's just interesting that the king's daughter was wed to the king of pop. So yeah,
yeah, it's a crazy world.
a little bit.
All the connections. But
No,
I
it's
like Elvis. His music's nice. It's fun. I play it for my kids sometimes in class and they go, "Oh, this is old school." I'm like, "Yeah, it is old school." They're funny. They're a lot of fun.
kids these days. I swear.
Come on, you're not that old yet.
No, give
You
it
may be
time.
older than Elvis when he died,
I
but
am definitely older than Elvis when he died. So wow, that's still kind of. I think that was the bigger shock to me because I remembered him being older, like 42. No way.
Mhm.
But I mean, I'm sure when I was 23, I was like, oh, 42 is an old person. Nowadays, just I've gotten to the end of the road. Like, oh, I guess there might be a little more for me.
You hear someone say they're 42, you go, "Oh, I remember when I was that age. You
Yep.
young
Well, there was a
kiddo,
time when I
you."
thought I still am, but whatever.
Yep.
It's fine.
You've passed the midlife crisis age. Congrats. You've
Hmm.
survived. Woot woot.
Anyway, for a brief history of the king, and more specifically, a brief ending of the king in the 70s, we bid a sad farewell. And I suppose we'll see you next time from What You Missed When You Didn't Exist.
Uh-huh,
See you
uh-huh,
later.
uh-huh.